Well, hello, good morning. How are you? Hi. Well, I'm very happy to be here in Belgium. It was a long trip from Colombia. Today, my name is Esteban Echeverri. I'm Newark CEO. Today, I'm going to tell you about how to implement a customized accounting system with Odoo. Well, we at Newark care a lot about giving our customers the information they need to make the best decisions. That's why we trust in open and enhanceable technologies just like Odoo. And because we are a young company, we are completely growth focused, just as Odoo is. This is our team. We work in Popayan City at the south of Colombia. And we occupy positions like project management, development, business analysis, and so on. So let us begin. The story I'm going to tell you about today is that of Confacauca. This is a company that was founded 50 years ago, and with 1,000 employees gives financial services to the workers of all the companies in the south of Colombia. So they give subsidies, loans, and recreational services to these people. Because this is a non-profit private company, but it's strictly government regulated because they manage money of all the companies in the benefit of its employees, of their employees. At the end, Confacauca purchased 200 enterprise users, and they decided to implement the accounting, purchases, inventory, sales, and human resources modules. They had been looking for an ERP for almost 3 years, but solutions like SAP or JD Edwards were didn't provide the return on investment they were expecting, and were not flexible enough to meet the special conditions of this kind of industry. There are like 40 of this kind of enterprises, of organizations in Colombia. They approached us 3 years ago, and we showed them Odoo. It was 3 years ago, but maybe 2.5. And of course, they couldn't be more surprised. They got in love immediately with how user-friendly it was, how familiar the interface it was for them, and how complex business flows were easy to accomplish from the start to finish. You could go from intention to creation in just some simple steps. And it had as well a great functional scope. There was an app for every area of the organization. And to the surprise of them, when they knew the solution was open and was very extensible, they were completely hooked. So we started. And of course, we used Odoo ourselves to manage this project. We used it to gather requirements through user stories, to record the more than 180 deliverables of this project, to have this platform as our central control panel to organize our project teams. We had 5 of them for this project, and use an easy communication platforms for all our needs. Odoo allowed us to distribute our work efficiently, to have responsible for every task, and to manage our process flow organically through phases. We started this project with 5 phases, 5 stages, and organically we were creating more and more stages for quality assurance, for having a stage precisely for each task. It also allowed us to iterate faster, because this was the central communication platforms of what happening. And to be very well prepared for this project that we knew from the very start that was going to be a challenge, because they had very high expectations. They wanted better tools to model their specific business activities. They wanted an upgrade, an integration from the legacy applications, many of them written in COBOL, in legacy Java, in many distributed PHP applications. But they as well wanted to keep stability because they had been in business for 50 years. And they wanted, at the end, to bring something fresh, but at the same time powerful and easy to use. They wanted flexibility. And because of this, we created a new application designed for them with their own colors, logos, and with a familiar look and feel. This was the result. We used their colors, we used their logos just to improve user acceptance of this application. This is something that now you can do it with version 11, but not in version 9. We also did some customizations for their bank accounts because they had to manage more than 200 bank accounts using 3 different bank formats. We developed the functionality to translate numbers from text to Spanish. We based our development on the French module and the German module. And we had to record some extra fields to have all the metadata necessary to these checks. Well, it was easy to do with QWeb, and we just extended the Odoo's current functionality. We also created some additional information on partners forms. This to comply with local authorities' requirements. They had to manage more than 300,000 partners. So they had internal needs to classify these partners, and they had as well some internal needs and fiscal requirements. So we created fields like related partners, first name, other name. This is necessary in Colombia for the taxes authorities. We created concepts like affiliated or not. That is a concept very internal to the company. And they also wanted integration. And because of this, we developed some custom formats, plain text formats, to integrate with 2 different bank platforms that allow them to pay one or multiple vendors in a single transaction. Here again, what we do was to extend Odoo's functionality to create this particular format, and the result was just this plain text format in the particular conditions of each platform. We had two of them, and all was recorded in Odoo, but they had the possibility to just with a click export the file format and upload it to the platform and pay immediately what the payables they had. We wanted to do this with a web service, but unfortunately, the bank platform didn't allow us to have this service. So it had to be with a plain text and then upload it again to the platform. We also did some external services interfacing. We had to, as I told you before, they had some legacy distributed systems. They have some specialized software for generated credits to calculate loans as well. So we had to interface this, and for these requirements, we use Odoo's RPC interface. We didn't need any customizations from the side of Odoo, but we developed some scripts to integrate Odoo with the systems. Every other system in the company knew how to speak with Odoo, but Odoo itself didn't know anything about the systems. So it was easier this way, because at first they were expecting us to know how to connect with each of the systems. We told them that it would be it wouldn't be flexible enough to develop this in this way, and we inverted the dependency. All of the systems knew about Odoo. There was an API that was the Odoo's RPC, and so with simple scripts, we managed to do this. We used direct SQL in some cases to improve performance. They also needed speed, because they had to manage more than 300,000 partner records. So we had to simplify the payables and receivable reconciliations and match directly from the journal entries all of its lines. So what we did is that directly from the journal entry, we created some buttons to have a wizard pop up and allow you to get the matching line for the reconciliation. That was something that we did to simplify the process, because they had a lot of documents that didn't have a proper document like an invoice or a vendor bill to just with a click reconcile it with a payment, for example, because they had to give a lot of loans and credits that were loaded to the system by an interface. So there was not a bill, there was not an invoice. So we did it this way. And we just took some functionality that Odoo already had and put it directly on the lines. This was the way they used to work as well with these buttons in their legacy system. That was a couple accounting system that they had been working with for 30 years or something. We created as well some functionality to distribute analytic accounts in a simple manner. They had to control 3,500 financial accounts and 600 analytic accounts. So the distribution of these records was not a simple task. They wanted to do it from the source, and we created some distribution templates that allow them to map some analytic accounts with other ones in given percentages. So for example, here we are selecting a template and distributing it in equal parts in 33%, and then you have it all distributed from the source. We created some functionality as well for doing mass payments. They had to manage 25,000 suppliers, and we allowed them to pay in a single transaction up to 4,000 vendors in just seconds. We reconciled automatically all these payables, and for performance reasons, we had to bypass Odoo's ORM. Because at first, well, here's the result. You could choose the payables you wanted to do the transaction with and generate the payment. And then you have it, the journal items. Here's the journal entry with all the payments automatically reconciled. So we had to bypass Odoo's ORM for this special scenario, because at first it was taking hours to fulfill the whole process. And by bypassing the ORM and doing it all in just a single transaction, 4,000 payables were reconciled in just 10 seconds. So that's what the module. And after we understood how they did their reconciliations, we went a step further and allowed them to reconcile all their payables and receivables with a single click. We went from manual process to complete automation and reconcile almost all lines with a single click. So we put some buttons on the top of the journal entries, and as you can see, with a single click, all the reconciliations were done automatically, because we knew what were the heuristics they were using to do the match. They were matching by date, by amounts, and by account. So we did this for them automatically, and they had journal entries with hundreds of lines. So this simplifies a lot the process for them. What happens, for example, if the match cannot be done automatically? Well, the assistant, the accounting assistant, can do the match manually as usual, but this simplifies almost 80% of all their transactions. And they also needed security because they were a big company. So we created 50, they were using, they purchased 200 Odoo enterprise users, but just for the accounting model, there were 50 assistants working on the application. So they wanted to have a strict control of who could use certain functionality of the application module. We at the end created 16 additional security groups and used Odoo's Open Chapter everywhere in an extended manner. So here you can see that we have all these groups only for them. And we used Odoo Open Chapter. They got very in love with the Open Chapter because it was a generic functionality that you could easily implement in any document in Odoo. And what we did is that we extended this functionality to track much more fields than Odoo by default does. So in terms of security, it was a very high improvement comparing with their legacy system. And we created as well some functionality to represent all those documents that for some reason had to be annulled from the system. But they had very strict regulations to not delete any document from the system when it had been created. However, they didn't want this to be in draft state forever in the journal entries view. So what we did is that we created another table, another data structure to have these annual documents copied from one table to the other one. And this was a read-only table that gave us the auditing capabilities they were expecting from the system. And finally, they urge for accuracy. And because of this, we created additional fields on accounts to have multiple aggregated levels and to meet local standards in an easier way. They allowed us as well to represent business units, cost centers, and other analytic levels. So we created these levels on accounts. At first, we developed this functionality directly on journal items in each line, but it proved to be quite unflexible because we needed all these fields just for reporting purposes. So we put them directly on accounts. We had some IFRS levels, some fiscal levels, some analytic levels, and we used this functionality a lot for all the custom reporting capabilities we implemented for them. We created some custom query wizards that had several filtering and aggregating capabilities to generate all Colombian accounting reports and calculate internal performance metrics. The reports look like this because they had to resemble very much what they had before to improve user acceptance. It was very COBOL-ish, but they had a lot of functionality for filtering and for aggregating, and these reports had like hundreds of pages, like a balance sheet of 600 pages was not uncommon. And we as well created some functionality to report IFRS differences. In Colombia, you have to manage both types of accounting until 2020, both general accepted accounting practices in Colombia and IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standards. So we created two types of journals to have these transactions, and the mechanisms we used was to overlap these transactions. If you want to have a report in IFRS, you just use GAAP and the differences in IFRS, and then you have the IFRS report. And again, we created these wizards, and you have the difference and the call GAAP and IFRS in these reports. And so after 200 modules developed for them and a lot of consulting, the project was a success. And before we go, I just want to give you some tips and takeaways. The first one is, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Do it the Odoo way. Though we develop a lot of functionality, we also did it following Odoo guidelines. We didn't create additional structures by itself. We just improved what Odoo already had in itself. We did this as well to embrace change and to make us easier the road in improving with Odoo, because if we did all by ourselves, not reusing what Odoo already had, it would be very difficult to upgrade with the platform. Make it work first, and then optimize it. And again, we did this all the time as well. We tested and we developed all with Odoo's ORM and with Odoo's standard functionalities. And when we knew it was working and needed a performance boost, we developed better algorithms or use direct SQL queries, but all by first using Odoo standard procedures. This is very important. Have key users involved from the very start, and we understood this in the bad way by not doing this. So at first, we developed a lot of functionality that, like the users, the direct users of the application required from us, but this was not what the high management was expecting, because they didn't want to recreate their legacy systems. They want to have an improvement. And many of these processes were obsolete by 2017. So we understood this when the high management told us, no, this is a step that we no longer require, just forget it. Odoo is just sufficient for us. And if you read the documentation, you look for help, and you Google it a lot, and nothing helps, just go to the source. This is why we love Odoo. You can go to the source. It's open, and you can do whatever you want with Odoo. Thank you.